friends are synths. A few weeks ago, I shared a video talking about my complete and utter failure to build a KOSMO Modular Synthesizer, a project which I've been working on, or maybe not working on, for the best part of a year. Now, I didn't really expect to get too much interest in that video. It was really just a kind of a way to hold myself accountable and try and spur me on to actually make some progress on the project. But as it turns out, it seemed to strike a chord with folks, and I got a whole bunch of comments with people sharing their own stories of shame about projects that they'd tried to build and failed, but also giving words of advice, tips and tricks for when you're embarking on projects like this, and generally just a whole load of really nice, encouraging words from people. So thank you for that. It's nice to know that the internet isn't always a barren hellscape of negativity. Now, over the past few weeks, I've made quite a lot of progress. In fact, way more progress than I thought I would, and I largely credit that to you lot for forcing me to actually do something. And so I thought I would give you an update on what I've done, and maybe it'll act as an inspirational tale, because obviously I'm quite an inspirational figure. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is take this camera, get it off the stand, and I'll show you my current status of the modular synthesizer. Now, as you can see here, it's actually beginning to look like a real modular synth. Now, you can see that there are some completed modules up the top here, but I won't talk about them just yet, because before that, I want to show you in here, you can see a couple of separate frequency central power supplies. Now, these were the ones that I was talking about being afraid to build, but as you can see, they're actually in there and they're working. Now, I've attached them to the rear of the case using some standoffs, which I just screwed in, you know, drilled holes and screwed them in the back, so they're nice and secure. I did run into a few issues with these. The first thing was that when I put them together, I plugged them in and it didn't really work at all. Only one of these power indicator lights came on, which is no good at all. And I discovered that even though I knew I had to use an AC adapter, I found an adapter that said it was AC, but it turned out it was actually DC, so it wasn't working at all. And because of that, I built two of them. The second one, which is this one actually, is much cleaner and better built, and I actually managed to put it together in 20 minutes. And it just goes to show that once you've built things a few times, you get much quicker and more efficient. Anyway, it's all working now. I had to get an AC power supply from a place called allmyfas. They're actually quite hard to find, and they cost more money than I expected. It was about £22 for the AC power supply, which doesn't bode well if I want to add another one in there. Anyway, it's working. What more can I ask for, really? In terms of these ribbon cables, you can DIY these. Apparently it's not too difficult or expensive to do it. However, I just decided to buy them pre-made because on AliExpress I got a huge number of them for not very much money at all, and it seemed like not building these would be one thing less for me to fuck up. For those of you that don't know, by the way, these individual ribbon cables connect the different modules up to the power supply, so that's what they are for. Now, as you can see, my case has now got these rails installed, and they're also a nice red colour. However, the last time I did a video, even though I had the case, I hadn't quite installed these rails yet. And part of the reason for that is that because I wanted to have 4 rows of 20 centimetres so that I could have 4 rows for the modules, I was going to have to measure these fairly exactly. And accurate measurements are not something that I am known for. I'm not the most patient or meticulous man in the world. However, I took the front panels and I used them as a way of measuring it. I glued 2 individual pine strips together and then nailed them in, so they're actually very sturdy. As it turns out, the bottom row is a wee bit shorter than 20 centimetres, which means that the modules on the bottom here overlap the case rather than, you know, the rack strip as they should. It doesn't matter too much, but I think what I would do in the future if I was building another one of these cases is give myself a wee bit more room, because ultimately it's probably better to have a wee bit of space and have more space than you need than have less space, because then you kind of run into weird issues where you know, your modules won't fit or whatever. The other stupid thing I did, by the way, is when I installed these rails, I didn't paint them first, and then I put the power supply and everything in, and then realised I hadn't painted them, so I had to then go back and paint them with some red acrylic paint, which I think actually I've got down here. So yeah, anyway, they looks good in the end, so I'm not going to worry too much. Now, moving on to the actual modules up here, perhaps most surprisingly of all, I've actually completed 3 different modules, as you can see. The first one is this number 113 Rennie Schmitz, I believe, or Rennie Schmidt, I'm not entirely sure, can't read the font. But this is a filter module which is based on the MS-20 filter. It's particularly squealy and interesting. Over here, I have not 1 but 2 safety valve modules, and these, as you can hopefully see, are valve distortion overdrive modules. I built 2 of them because I want a kind of stereo setup with these. They're also really fairly straightforward to build. I should say that now, but they are one of the more straightforward modules to build. And I also had some old valves kicking about that I was planning to use as backups for my valve guitar amp, but they are so old now that I thought I may as well just use them for this build. Now you can see that I have gone with a yellow colour scheme here. I have been using yellow knobs. I'm still waiting for another supply of them so that I can finish off this module. However, I discovered a few problems, or a few issues I ran into. The first one was that I can't find large yellow knobs, or at least larger than this size, which is a shame because it means that, you know, I would like to have the whole thing yellow knobs, but, you know, I also want some big chunky knobs for certain places. So I've had to go with these black Boss style knobs. The other thing about this, unfortunately, is that even though I'm very pleased that I upgraded the potentiometers that I was using from some cheap flimsy ones to the 9mm alpha pots, because these are really good quality, they feel really nice. The problem is that these are 6.35mm, and these knobs that I had very many of lying around, which I bought a long time ago, the insides of these are actually only 6mm. So when I went to install them, they wouldn't fit on the pots, which was really annoying and quite disheartening because I thought I was going to have to spend a lot more money to get a lot more pots. However, I discovered that there's something called a reamer, or a reamer drill bit, which is one of these things. And basically, this is like a drill bit, except it doesn't have the pointy end on it. And this means that you can kind of expand holes. And so what I did was drilled out the inside of these knobs so that they actually fit, which was much easier to do than I thought it would be, and is a nice wee victory because I thought, you know, that was going to be another expense and, you know, area of shame. Now the final thing is that I have built a whole bunch of my own patch cables. I wanted yellow patch cables and I didn't want to spend a lot of money to get them in different lengths. So I bought a whole bulk roll of yellow, you know, mono jack cable, a whole bunch of really cheap connectors. These are from AliExpress, really not expensive at all. And I've built, you know, a whole bunch of yellow cables, which just adds to the aesthetic. Now I'll show you this thing in action. I don't want to do a full demo on this or anything like that. I'll probably walk you through how this works in another video, but just to prove that it's actually working, I'm going to turn it on and let you hear it making a sound. To explain the signal flow here, what's happening is I've got this cable coming in from my Eurorack over here. It is just a kick drum, a Russian walkie-talkie module, I think it is. It is just playing a kick drum sound. It's going through this filter module, and then I'm going to daisy chain them through these safety valve modules just for some huge kick noises. So let's turn on the the module and see how this begins to sound. So I'll turn up the input on the filter module and you'll hopefully hear the kick. Pretty good. Now I will engage this safety valve. Sounds fucking superb. Play about with the filter. You can hear it gets fucking wild. And then let's turn on the second safety valve module just for ludicrous levels of overdrive. So that's it, I've actually made some progress on this project, which is as much a surprise to me as it is to you, I'm sure. Now in terms of next steps, I've got a whole bunch of other KOSMO modules that are in various stages of completion. Those include a drum machine, a delay module, another filter, a buffered multiple, and also a kind of bouncing ball ADSR thing. And I'm waiting on parts for a few of them, but hopefully over the next month or so I'll actually make some real progress and start to fill this case out. After I've built those modules that I've got from Look Mum No Computer, I also want to start looking at some more custom type things. So finding circuits or schematics online and building them out with my own kind of custom front panels. And one of the easier projects or easier panels in theory that I'm going to put together is a format jumbler so that I can take the mini jacks from my modular system, plug them into this panel, or this module I guess I should say, and then convert them into the big jacks that KOSMO uses, because those wee jack adapter things are a pain in the arse and don't really work properly. And to do that, I've ordered and also received a whole bunch of quite nice yellow acrylic, which I'm planning to use, you know, to keep in with the colour scheme. I'm sure this won't be a disaster at all, because drilling acrylic is meant to be a pain in the arse, and also they're quite thick, so I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to get the jacks to affix properly to them. I might have to kind of counter drill things or something, I don't really know, but that's the next steps and what I'm planning to do. I think I've learned quite a lot in a short space of time doing this project, or at least realised quite a lot in a short space of time, which, you know, just goes to show that I should probably actually have just, you know, given myself a kick up the arse quite a long time ago and finished some of these things. But the things I've kind of come to realise are that, one, if you've got momentum, you need to kind of ride it while you can, because you're not always going to feel motivated to build something. And if you don't kind of ride the momentum and enthusiasm while you've got it, you can very quickly become, you know, despondent and not make much progress. So if you feel inspired to build something, once you get some of those wee victories, like things start working, take advantage of it and make the most of that motivation. But at the same time, you also have to kind of remember to take breaks, because I'm the kind of obsessive person where if I get too excited about something, I'll keep working at it, and that kind of can often lead to stupid mistakes or impatience. So as much as you want to ride the motivation, you also have to kind of find a way to structure things so that you're not burning it out, which is equally as important. Now, the other thing that's really important, which I am not very good at all, which will seem very obvious, is to plan a wee bit and be a wee bit more organised. Because if you're just that wee bit more organised, then you actually start to see better results much quicker. So for example, what I've been doing is taking the bill of materials for each of the modules, loading them up in Google Drive or whatever, and literally ticking off or, you know, changing the colour to green when I've installed different components on the PCB. And that way I get a real tangible sense of how far along I am, and it's not just this kind of never-ending project which you have no kind of grasp of where you are. The other good thing about being organised is that you can start to plan much better economically, in terms of, you know, if you've got a module that you know is further down the list and you're not going to be working on it for a while, then at that point you can make sure you've got all the components you need ordered, and you don't have to order them from an expensive local retailer. You can afford to wait, you know, a longer time and order them from AliExpress or something and wait the 6 weeks, because you don't need them immediately. And that means that when they do all arrive, or, you know, when you come to build the module, you know you've got everything, which just makes everything much quicker and much smoother. Now, the other thing though that's worth saying in my final kind of observation is that sometimes it's better to just spend a wee bit more money to get the parts you need locally and quickly. So if that means Amazon Prime or eBay or whatever it is, as opposed to purely going on economics and buying things in bulk from China, because there's nothing worse than finding out you need a couple of parts to finish a module and then deciding that you'll buy them from AliExpress and having to wait 2 months before you can continue on with your project. So sometimes, just sometimes, it makes sense just to buy them for the increased or inflated price, just so you can actually make some progress. Thank you again for all of your words of encouragement as I've navigated the various failures of this project. I am sure there will be far more failures to come, so please continue to shower me with your various words of adulation and gratuitous praise, because I need the validation. I really do. Hopefully this will prove inspiring perhaps to somebody, because ultimately, if a disorganised idiot like myself can manage to make progress on a project that I've put off for a year, then you definitely can as well.